half in the bag. Hey Jay, you know why they call it solo?
Why?
Because one person saw it. Also, in a previous adventure in our lives, I worked tirelessly trying to find a button that would eject the escape pod.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
How could I not find it now? See, those are. Now I just forcefully pulled it off, and if you'll note, there's no ejection system built in.
There's not. You looked very thoroughly for it.
Yeah, and see, I'd like to give myself some credit.
Okay.
Because what I was playing with before was a smaller version of the Millennium Falcon. And what I was looking for was this. So you can understand my confusion. And then things got worse. It's like Russian nesting dolls.
It's like the popularity of Star Wars.
It just keeps shrinking.
It just keeps shrinking.
It just keeps shrinking and getting worse.
Hey, Mike, I've got an idea. Do you want to feel miserable for the next 2 hours?
As opposed to what? It's time again for the most horrifying film ever made. The film that made people faint at Cannes and Sundance, which had nothing to do with the bad clams they were served before the screening. Why, it's Hereditary. So, Jay, what did you think of Hereditary?
No jump scares!
That's a reason to celebrate.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. We just saw it, and there's a scene in the movie where Toni Collette goes to like a dealing with grief meeting, one of those meetings where everyone sits in a circle and talks about their feelings. And it's like her first time there, and she just unloads like all of this like crazy shit about her childhood and like her brother dying and her mother being controlling, and it just goes on and on and on. And the camera like slowly goes into her, and it just keeps going, and it gets more and more crazy. And then it hard cuts to a reverse shot of everyone just sort of staring at her, like, and that's the movie. I think it might be great. I think I need more time to process it. It's a hard movie to talk about immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's definitely this year's The Witch, which is slow, atmospheric, creepy, builds up to a climax, and then it plays a bunch of film festivals, gets rave reviews, then gets released into the wilds of multiplexes, and everyone goes, that sucked.
Yeah.
People have been conditioned to those jump scares. When they think of scary movie, they think of like the Insidious movies, and I actually like the Insidious movies for what they are, but it's like, that's a different type of scary. Or The Conjuring. Those are good horror movies, but those are, they're like popcorn movies.
They are popcorn.
They're like the Marvel movies of horror.
Yes, popcorn horror. I was thinking of The Conjuring in this, mainly with the set design. Like, they live in an old kind of Victorian house, but it's all very well maintained, and the lighting is even and naturalistic. And I was thinking of The Conjuring when they show that house, and it's just like, it just looks like
everything has to look dark and gross.
It's so
and
disgusting.
dark.
Yeah, it looks like a haunted house set, literally like a haunted house set. And you're like, you're going too far.
Yeah.
James Wan, you're going too far with your visuals.
So you look at those movies from the 70s, The Exorcist, it's just in a house. Yes. Amityville Horror, it's just a house.
The horror comes from elsewhere, but modern day popcorn horror needs to also have jump scares, but needs to also look disgusting and gross and horribly lit. And like, who sets their light bulbs in their house to look like a horror film? You don't. You want to live in your house. It wants to be nice. The horror comes from outside. So if you can appreciate good movies that are a slow burn, that have some creepiness and top-notch acting, then this is a pretty good film.
This taps into the kind of darker, sort of deeper kind of family drama stuff, and the horror comes from there. and then the more visceral horror is built on top of that.
I think I came in with the expectations high ideal, and I enjoyed what you just said. I enjoyed the atmospheric, slow burn stuff up until a point when I said, "What's the hook?" Because I at first I appreciated the cinematography. Yes. Because it was bare bones. It wasn't creepy house, dark shadows, unlit, underlit faces and smoke. And it was like meh. It was kind of.
It was naturalistic.
Naturalistic cinematography, and
as far as the lighting, and as far as the shot composition, I loved the Wes Anderson-esque, perfectly center frame shots.
There's a lot of that
because that ties in with Toni Collette's little miniatures that she makes.
Right. There's a lot of flat angles, very symmetrical. I mean, that opening shot's really neat when they move into the house. Yeah. And it's all, that's kind of like a framing device, the little miniatures and...
Do you want me to say spoilers for this whole thing?
I guess so, yeah.
Because this is a hard movie to talk about without getting into all the details of it.
But there's one scene in particular that sticks out in my mind as far as when you're watching it, you go, ooh, someone else would have shot this totally different. It's when Toni Collette's trying to get her husband to burn the little drawing book.
Oh, yeah.
And she's just batshit crazy. And it's just
it just holds.
Slow pan on a tripod, trying to get this guy over to the fireplace.
And no cutting back and forth.
No frantic editing. No she gotta do the thing because I'm crazy. Mm-hmm. Like a different director would have done. But at the same time, I'm watching it, and I'm like, what's the hook? What's going to happen? The Witch, I didn't think that. The Witch...
Are you saying this in a bad way?
In a bad way.
Okay.
The Witch...
I was going to say, I'm thinking the same thing, but in a good way.
No. Because the Witch took place hundreds and hundreds of years ago, in puritanical times. So there's a separation. You get in the bed of a creepy blanket, and you go, creep. Whatever. This is set in a modern day setting, and it's not abstract enough as to where logic goes out the window. Logic is still there.
Yeah.
And I think it was like if it were a bar graph or a line graph, it would be like and then because
are you talking about for the rest of the movie or just kind of in
yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a weird frame of mind I was in when I was watching it because little creepy girl. I feel bad saying that about a little girl.
Well, the character is creepy. She's really good in the movie too.
She's a good little actress.
Yeah.
It's her first role. I think it's at Introducing. The Omen. There's a little bit of that in there.
There's a bit of a lot of movies in this, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah. I was fascinated with this movie up until the older brother goes to a party. And I was like, this is weird storytelling. I did not expect all these twists and turns. Yeah. They established little girl has a nut allergy. First shot in the party, someone's chopping nuts.
Yep.
And I'm like, better bring that EpiPen. That girl's eating those nuts, which is pretty common for a high school party. Girls eating nuts.
Oh yeah, there's lots of baking going on. This type of baking going on.
Oh, that was a sex joke. I think it went over your head.
Just do it again then.
Who the hell that's staying in? I said... But in this context, it's a little creepy girl eating actual nuts that are being baked into a cake.
Yes.
Because, like you said, chocolate cake.
High school parties are just full of baking.
We're having a chocolate cake party. Unless maybe they're plugging it up with marijuana.
Maybe. Which is even worse for that poor little girl then.
Yeah.
Or actually, maybe it lessened the impact of getting your fucking head knocked off.
Right.
She's a little more relaxed.
So dude wants to go after the girl he's hot for in his class.
In a wonderful moment when they introduce that when they're in the classroom and he's behind her and he's looking at her butt, but it's not like another movie would shoot it. They try and find a way, even though they're in those awkward high school classroom chairs, they try and shoot it in a way where they make her ass look hot. And here it's just a butt in a chair.
It was weird.
It was so common and perfect.
Yeah. She didn't get up and walk and
no, it's just an awkward shot of her sitting in a chair.
I don't think that shot has ever been in a film before. This is breaking new ground. I got to stay back on track.
Okay.
A little girl has a allergic reaction to the nuts. The kid's just stoned. I'm going to try to drive you to the hospital. Girl needs air, sticks her head out, gets her head decapitated by a electrical pole.
Yes.
Then it sort of like becomes dreamlike. He goes home, goes to sleep. Obviously, he's in shock. He just leaves her bloody, headless body in the car. The mom finds
Leaves
it.
the head on the side of the road.
Yep.
It's great though, because I mean it's horrifying, but it's like when that happened, like I was so like I was getting like worked up by it, and when he stops the car and it just holds on him, staring straight ahead, like because like how do you process something like that? Like it's so horrific.
Yeah.
And I realized like after a couple seconds, like I wasn't breathing, like it really like it shook me.
It's a very, very powerful, scary, gut-wrenching moment, and I was like, okay, I'm settling in. I'm ready for this roller coaster ride. I'm ready for more things to happen. But my point is that that's when the movie takes the turn, and it becomes kind of a different movie. Like with this, I had expectations of, because when you watch a movie like this, you got your checklist. What is it? Is it going to be nothing? Is it going to be just a weird psychological family drama? Is it going to be a ghost or a demon? And then eventually...
You weren't intrigued by this? Were you getting sort of annoyed by trying to figure it out?
No, more so bored. Because I kept thinking of that one terrible movie that we watched on Best of the Worst.
Oh, Hack-O-Lantern.
I kept thinking of Hack-O-Lantern.
That's one movie I was not thinking of during this.
There's a lot of echoing from Hack-O-Lantern in this, based on the end, which kind of, with the witch, it wasn't spelled out so clearly. It was more what you took away from it. It wasn't so, but this became a little more clear cut.
Well, like The Witch, I think both of them are very, like, there is a literal demon, but it's more so about the metaphor of what this all represents. In this case, like the title says, Hereditary, and it's about, I kind of thought about it as like mental illness. And
Well,
that can be passed down, and how that affects not only the people that it gets passed down to, but their other family members. And that was my main takeaway, but see, it's interesting. You said you kind of got less interested after the daughter died. That's when I got more interested, because I was like, I don't know where the fuck this is going now.
Sure.
I thought it was, for the most part, I thought it was going to be a creepy little kid movie, and then they chop off that kid's head.
Let me correct my statement.
Okay.
I did find it interesting because I didn't know where it was going, up until the point where, like you said, Toni Collette goes to like a therapy meeting, lost dead family member therapy meeting,
grief meeting, whatever.
and she meets the neighbor mom from Small Wonder.
Hello there.
Oh, hi, Mrs. Brindle.
Oh, you must call me Bonnie.
That's a reference nobody will remember.
Toni Collette, come over to my house and let's have tea. And I can talk to my son. He's dead, but I can talk to him. Here, read this. What? It's in some kind of weird ancient language.
Well,
And I was like, no, that's pretty fucking lame. I'm like, oh no.
Oh no! See, I liked all that stuff because it's like they introduce that, but you don't know where it's going yet, and that's kind of, it was like, okay, we're introducing a new thing, but what does that have to do? And then something else gets introduced.
Yeah.
And it all builds, and I think I think the last like 15, 20 minutes of this movie are kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I would say it sags a little bit in the middle. It's a little over 2 hours.
Oh.
Tighten that up a little bit. But for that middle chunk where after the daughter dies, it becomes more of like a family drama and about this family dealing with grief and how that can tear a family apart. I was thinking of, and I watched an interview with the director afterwards. I was thinking of the movie Don't Look Now, which is with Donald Sutherland. It's like a 70s movie.
That sounds like an Ashton Kutcher comedy.
It's about Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. They have a daughter that drowns, and then the rest of the movie is about their marriage falling apart as a result of this.
My daughter is dead, Laura. She does not come peeping with messages back from behind the fucking grave. Christine is dead. She is dead. Dead, 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 dead.
It's more of a drama, and then it turns into a horror movie in like literally the last minute of the movie. And so I was thinking of that, and then I watched an interview with the director, and he specifically references that. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And there's some great just dramatic scenes in this. Like, I love the dinner scene with the mom and the son yelling back and forth at each other.
Just fucking say it! Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother!
And then the argument kind of ends, and then he, like, picks at it some more, and it keeps going.
Yeah. Oh,
that's this whole movie is just like hitting a raw nerve, and it just keeps batting at it.
Yeah. The acting, Toni Collette and the older son. I mean, wonderful.
It's Grandma. You know you were her favorite, right? Even when you were a little baby, she wouldn't let me feed you because she needed to feed you.
I do like the gloss, I guess you'd call it the top coat of a theme of mental illness, because she says early on, you know, I forget exactly what family member hung themselves, and
oh, that was her dad.
Yeah. And so that's when she's on.
Oh no, that was her brother.
Her brother,
which plays in because there's this whole thing of like the little daughter. She says, "Grandma wanted me to be a boy," and it's like, oh, okay, so a boy is important to the ceremony, and she wanted to do the ceremony with the older son, but the mom and the son were like distant from the grandma, so it's like she had to use the daughter. And it's like, I like piecing all that stuff together.
So there's the specter of mental illness, and that's also kind of woven into it. Is at some point you start to question if Toni Collette is insane, and if what is happening is in her head, because they tease it with the fact that she sleepwalks and imagines things.
Almost sets her and her kids on fire while sleepwalking. Yeah.
And the son, of course, like there's scenes outside of it where the son sees ghosts or sees his reflection and he smiles at himself and weird shit happens to him. But like the title implies, that mental illness could be passed down. So we don't know if there is a ghost. Our only anchor character is the dad. I'm the dad.
A part of me wants to say that character is underwritten, but at the same time, it's kind of great that he's just like, he's sort of like just a normal everyday person stuck in the middle of all this madness.
He's our protagonist. He's the straight man.
Yeah.
But so I think like, in the middle, it's not necessarily frustrating trying to figure it out. It rides the line between enjoying the mystery and being frustrated as to where they're going. And I think that's just me. Okay. Because I'm with horror movies, I'm like, where are you going? Is Bagul showing up? And then I find out Grandma's a Satan worshiper. And she's
not Satan though. It's one of Satan's minions, which is like, if you're going to worship someone, why not go all the way to the top?
Well, because they took the have your cake and eat it too route, which is you don't want to say devil worshippers.
Yeah, that's been done to death.
That's been done to death. So you say, well, it's really not.
And I was surprised actually because I did hear, I didn't know anything about the movie going in as far as like plot points or spoilers or where it was going, but even in like the trailer and stuff, it compares it like to The Exorcist, and it's the same company that put out The Witch, and I was expecting something a little less conventional, and it ended up being, especially as it gets into the third act, a much more conventional horror movie than I was expecting. Not in a bad way, because it's an incredibly well executed one.
Yes.
But story-wise, I was like, oh, this is a little more straightforward than I was expecting. Yeah. This is more like accessible to a general audience than something like The Witch was.
The conventionality of the plot, I think, was disappointing. The execution, superb, you know.
No jump scares.
No jump scares. Lots of creepy visuals.
Lots of quiet moments. My favorite thing in a horror movie is when there's something creepy just in the corner of the frame. They do that multiple times in this.
There's a scene when the son wakes up in the bedroom and you could kind of see the upper corner of his room, and it kind of looks like there's a person up there. Then there's some red light from outside that flares up. You can see a little better, and you're like, is that Toni Collette in her bathrobe up there?
Yeah.
Like on the ceiling? How is that? And then whoosh, whisks out the right side of the frame and like weird shit like that.
Were you thinking of at that moment, and then the next part when he's in the living room and the mom's up in the corner? I was thinking of Exorcist 3. There's that part with the old lady crawling across the ceiling. And all these things where it's like, it borders on being funny. And I think that may be what turns, like, because this movie, for a general audience, the cinema score is like a D+. And I always wonder about that. Does it come across, it rides that line of being just because it's so bizarre looking that you could either think it's creepy or silly.
The reason why I got a D- cinema score, spoilers, is the ending. Older son throws himself out the window after being frightened by demonic worshipers in his attic, dies on the lawn. The spirit of a little weird girl goes inside his body.
The spirit of the weird girl who is also the vessel for the demon,
Yes.
which is a little weird. But
Yes, the demon lives again, but then it just ends.
Yeah.
It ends on a little miniature of the house. Great.
That's the Rosemary's Baby ending.
God is dead! Satan lives!
But his friends in their car didn't show up. Dude, you're under the spell! and then, what? Get him! And then the house blows up. You know what I mean? His friends from high school they smoke pot with under the bleachers show up. We figured it all out in the library!
Those kids aren't figuring nothing out. I love that too. They're like horrible, inane dialogue that feels very like realistic.
But
this is a horror movie from the 70s. This is, I mean, like I mentioned, Rosemary's Baby. I mean,
nihilistic.
Nihilistic,
disturbing.
minimal but not abstract. Tons of wonderful visuals.
Satanic panic, culty stuff.
Yeah.
But I think for general audiences, it never, like, I was thinking of The Shining too, because you have those droll, long, atmospheric, creepy stuff. But at some point, The Shining, Shelley Duvall smacks Jack Nicholson, and then he drags around an axe and
That's
chases
the last
them.
act of this movie. I would say the last act of this is pretty exciting.
Sort of.
They have the kid goes up into the attic, and I was thinking of Amityville Horror when they open the attic and all those flies come out.
Oh yeah, the fly. Well, that's another demon trigger is flies.
But then it turns out that has nothing to do with the demon. It just has to do with the dead body of the decapitated grandma that's in the attic.
Right. Yeah, obviously it's a well done movie. I think I take a different look at horror movies than you do because I'm very plot driven. I do like atmospheric stuff if it tickles me correctly, and if it that's so weird. Let me say that again.
Nope.
And where they were going with it in terms of horror movie pedestrian the satanic cult.
Yeah.
It's not like we have a slew of satanic cult movies that have been coming out in the past few years, but I was expecting something a little more twisted and psychological based on the framing device of her working on miniatures.
Oh, sure.
Which I don't know if it went over my head, but it didn't quite come into play.
I think it ties in because a lot of the movie is about like these characters dealing with grief and their past, and I think it's kind of about like her sort of like compartmentalizing events from her past and trying to simplify them and remove them from context to take out the grief or the sadness surrounding them. I mean, that's kind of what I got from it.
Sure. Like the obvious part when she's making the funeral home, she makes the crime scene. Where,
exactly. That was the scene that sort of solidified that for
That's
me.
how she deals with it. But like, don't get me wrong, I didn't want the little people to come alive.
That could have been great too.
I kept thinking of a very, very old episode of The Twilight Zone when this couple wakes up in their house and then they try to open the drawer and it doesn't open, and he picks up the phone. He's like, the phone doesn't work. The fridge doesn't work. No, this is all fake. And then at the end, you realize that they're in a dollhouse, and there's like a giant girl hovering over them.
Okay.
Quit playing with your alien toys, Sally.
Oh, okay.
Every episode of Twilight Zone ends that way. but
Oh my god, what's that?
I was, and this is obviously we just saw the movie, so I think it requires a little more processing, but I was a little confused about what the ceremony entailed. Like, I got the impression that it needed 3 generations of this family to have been decapitated. Because you got the grandmother, you got the grandmother's daughter, and then you got what ends up being the Toni Collette's daughter. And they're all decapitated at the end of the movie. And when the kid is driving to the party, they make a point of passing that telephone pole, and it's got the satanic symbol on it. So I assume that's the pole that the daughter ended up getting her head knocked off on. But it's like they plan, that's sort of a convoluted plan. Like, if that's how you plan on getting the daughter decapitated, I think this needs more processing to figure out what their plan was.
But either way, point was, the end of the film, the older son, or the son, becomes the embodiment of their demon god.
Yes.
And my question is, that is a satisfying ending. Why?
It's tragic.
Because
it's fucking scary because you put yourself. Because no, it's. I mean, the whole movie is you're watching this family fall apart.
See, the audience wants the football team to show up.
Who gives a fuck about them?
And burn the treehouse down, and then start punching like the naked elderly people in the satanic. Ah! And
that's not scary though. It's
Joe Schmo, the baker.
That's satisfying in the most like surface level way. The end of Rosemary's Baby.
You're talking about general audiences.
Fuck them. So they've changed the ending of this movie for him?
I'm not advocating for that ending. I'm just explaining why it has a D- score, Jay.
Okay.
They want the football team to show up and lay waste to the satanic cult. You foiled us once again, football team.
Oh, I did find a negative review on IMDb. Let's see if I can find it again. It was pretty good.
And then you cut to the graduation ceremony, pomp and circumstance, and da-na-na. I know I survived a satanic cult and made class valedictorian, but I'm going to college.
And then AC/DC starts playing.
She was a fast machine! She kept the motor clean! The best damn woman I've ever seen!
That was a really great AC/DC impression.
Thanks.
Naked zombies at the end, question mark. Apparently they think that the Satanists are zombies. Literally the worst movie but I've ever watched. What's with the random dog and the naked zombie people at the end? You don't care about the characters, no storyline, horrible acting. Horrible acting? How on earth is this movie getting 9 or 10 out of 10 stars? These people must have been paid off to rate this movie so high. And what's with all the crying like babies? Apparently you should not be emotionally distraught when your fucking daughter gets decapitated.
The circumstances in this film are not emotional.
They're not devastating
They're pretty common. They're pretty common.
I literally laughed at every scary scene. All I wanted to do the entire film was go home to play with my new puppy. The first half of the movie is dreadfully boring and way too long. If you must see this movie, go halfway through and you won't miss a thing. Except for the entire setup of everything. We should be paid to go see this movie. Scariest movie of the year. I would say Toy's Story 2 is scarier. So there you go. That's the people that are upset that the football team doesn't show up at the ending, I guess. I will say, I was, after the daughter died, I was strapping myself in for some misery porn. I was like, oh, like I was prepared for it because I've seen, pretty devastating movies. And so I thought it was like, oh, it's only going to get worse from here. This is going to be just like gut-wrenching the whole way through. And it really isn't. After that little chunk of the movie, then it becomes more traditional, scary. Again, well executed, but it doesn't get that, like, the scene right after the daughter dies where Toni Collette is like collapsed on the floor and she's just like wailing. I was like,
that was rough. That was rough.
Although it did almost get a laugh out of me when it cuts from that to the funeral and she's still at that exact same like heightened emotion.
Yes.
There's something about a hard cut there.
That was a comedy cut.
It reminded me in the Muppets, the Jason Segel Muppets movie, there's a part when one of the little Muppets finds out about the dastardly plans of the villains and he starts screaming and then it hard cuts to him on the bus and he's still screaming.
Yeah.
It hard cuts to another scene. It reminded me of that.
It's a typical comedy device. A switch of location and time, and the same emotion is still going on.
Yeah.
It's a very typical comedy device. So it was, yeah. She should have just been like,
Yeah,
all
man,
out of
something
tears at that
to
point.
vary it up from the two. Because her in the bedroom and the husband like half-heartedly trying to console her, but it's like, how do you console someone that's that wrecked?
Right.
So, Mike, would you recommend Hereditary?
I think so. It's a little long. It could use some editing, but the length adds to creepiness at times. But like you said, sagged a little in the middle. I'd be wary of seeing it in the theater on like Saturday night, because then you get people like that IMDb poster.
What's with the zombies?
You don't want
zombies. What the
You don't
fuck?
want chatting teens that are bored. The one we watched it in was great though, because the theater was quiet. So thankfully there was that. But
there was as many people in the theater when we saw this as there were when we saw Solo.
Yeah. Oh, Jay, would you recommend Faust?
I would recommend Faust. I would also recommend Hereditary. I like The Witch more. It's comparable to The Witch mainly in like style and tone more than anything. And this is, I think, more scary. Like there's more kind of visceral stuff to react to in this than The Witch. The Witch is more atmospheric, and I think it might kind of stick with you longer afterwards. But I was into this movie the entire way through. Satanic cult at the end, I am A-okay with that.
Oh, that's just some kind of old ancient Sumerian language. Just read it. Read it and just don't worry about it.
Oh, here's a complete nitpick, but it's something I noticed. When she's saying that to Toni Collette, as Toni Collette's leaving her house, she hands her the paper, and she says, now one thing you have to make sure of is when you read this, your entire family has to be in the house. But her mouth says room?
Yes!
They ADR'd house.
I saw that!
And then there's a moment later when Gabriel Byrne is sleeping in bed and you see like the doorway and you just hear her say the words off camera. So I'm assuming there was like a whole scene where she had the family together and they said the words and they cut out the scene and they're like, well, now we gotta fix this scene earlier in the movie. So they dubbed over her saying house from room.
That. I forgot about that, but I did notice
It's
that.
a very minor nitpicky thing, but I noticed it and it was weird.
You know why? Test screenings, they shut.
This didn't have test screenings.
Sure it did. Every film does, Jay. It's an investment. They test screened it and she said, come on, everybody, hold hands, let's do this thing. Let me unreel this. Klaatu, Verata, Nikto, and everyone went, I'm checking out.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's just like
this shit's stupid.
I'm assuming it's just like another scene with the family around the dinner table or something, and they tried to work it in where she says the words during a dinner scene and it's awkward. And they're like, it's pacing-wise, let's just pull this whole scene.
No. She went around and woke them up, brought them downstairs, and in that very scene, read the ancient text, and it came off as stupid. Then that's.
See, I'm gonna go with it was just a pacing issue, and they just had to take the scene out to speed up the movie.
Well, if Ari Asshat, whatever your name is, Ari Asman,
contact us, or somebody contact him and let us know.
We know something happened in the editing room, Ari.
And my point is, because of that minor bit of ADR,
you no longer recommend
it took me out of the movie, and the movie sucked.
Now I'd like to go play with Millennium Falcon toys.
You know what we could do now? Like, this was a pretty heavy movie to kind of, cleanse our palate. We could go see Solo again, and the two of us seeing it will double the box office for this weekend.
Oh.